Hello and welcome back to Deep Drive, your Saturday morning podcast brought to you by Kotak Mahindra Prime. Now, on this episode, we are going to be talking about the Munich Mobility Show and all the future cars you can expect. I'm Hormazd Sorabjee.
And I'm Sergius Barretto. And yes, we were in Munich at the show. And I think Hormazd, this time around, compared to the last episode, there seem to be a few more cars and a few more relevant to India, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, 2 years back was the last edition. Correct. And a little bit more. And I think in 23, it was dominated by the Chinese. It still is, but I think this time some of the European automakers had something to show.
Right.
And clearly they were there in, let's say in force.
Right.
And clearly, what's interesting is that the size of the stalls. I mean, if you go back to Frankfurt, Mercedes used to take a whole hall, which was about 4 to 5 stories high. This is just completely take that. It was like a whole building belonged to Mercedes. And here you see the stall was quite small. In fact, to shoot some of the models, it was quite challenging.
Yeah,
a very tiny space.
The main model, I mean, you and I were struggling to shoot between all those
that's right.
people and the barriers.
That's right. So I think, clearly, I think for us, Sergius, obviously we have to see what's India relevant.
Right.
Typically, I think in European shows, there's less so because they're focusing on the European market, on all the new EVs, many of which will not come to India. And clearly, I think, in that sense, a lot of the models were basically meant for Europe because this show is targeted at the European consumer. But we did have some really key products and from rival companies, both with different directions. So we had the BMW iX3, which was on the new Neue Class architecture, and the GLC EV as well.
Right.
Again, a completely different look, different design direction, all that. Yeah.
Exactly. And both models that we've had in India in the past, we've had the EQC.
Yeah.
Back then it was called the EQC. Now it's going to be called the GLC with EQ technology.
Yeah.
And of course the iX3. And now we have the new Neue Class base. So I think, yeah, you're right. These two were the main models for India at the show. And, it was interesting almost to see a couple of sort of commonalities and very sort of polar opposite directions both brands took. I mean, in a way, both brands looked to the past for their grille designs.
Yeah.
I think you even tweeted that.
That's right. The kidney has become smaller, and talking to the designer, Adrian Van Hooydonk, that basically he kind of admitted that the grills had become bigger.
Right.
They were going back to their past, and I think largely what he said, a good point. He said, okay, you guys have thrashed our grills in the media, on social media. Right. He said, but it hasn't impacted sales.
Right.
And largely it's because China is one of the biggest market. Of course,
China loves
bling and big grills, and really they were pandering to that. Clearly the Chinese market for them is tanking. And I think also it's realization they have to come back to their roots. So I think this time the iX3 had a much smaller kidney grille. Interesting, no chrome, but I think the chrome is now replaced by these fine LED lights. That is what the future is. But I think, Sergius, the main talking point was what underpinned the iX3.
Right.
And that is the new Neue Class EV architecture. 800 volts, really super fast charging times. Really it's it kind of even debuted the new technology, which was their panoramic vision display, which is that strip at the base of the windscreen, which is quite unique. The instrument panel had gone, and as if to prove the point that the instrument panel had gone, they had a 4-spoke steering wheel. Right. Now, you wouldn't have had the 4th spoke if there was a display behind it. So it was as if, we are proving the point that, we don't have that instrument display. And though I didn't quite like the 4-spoke design, but that's quite subjective. And of course, they had the central screen as well. And I think, you were there for the Mercedes. It was
the other way.
The other way.
The other way, because
what a large
39.1 inches and of a fat screen, not the thin ribbon one. So, okay, BMW also had it across the width, but it was a thin ribbon.
And it's more like, it's not a screen. It's more a, kind of reflection.
Almost like a HUD replacement. But this was a proper screen, a single. So it wasn't just a 3-screen.
It's a continuous display.
A continuous display. right from a big IP to the center screen to the passenger screen. So
Yeah.
completely opposite directions. Yes,
It'll be interesting to see which one consumers like.
Like more, yeah,
But
true.
I think, in the screen wars, maybe the Mercedes big screen, I think people still like. I don't know how it
Could
would
be for India, yes. I think Europe might go the BMW way, which is, the thinner thing, a little less subdued and less in your face.
Yeah.
But I think India and China might like the Mercedes approach.
And the graphics, the sharpness, the clarity on that panoramic vision display of BMW, absolutely outstanding. Yeah,
Right.
And obviously, you can configure it, have your own widgets. So really, I mean, it's really a new direction completely.
Absolutely.
And I mean, sitting behind that car, if you look at it, frankly, you got all the information you really want just on that strip, under the windscreen. And I was just looking at it. In terms of line of sight, it's actually perfect. Because you really don't have to take your eye off the road. So I think it really makes a lot of sense in that sense.
No, absolutely. And in fact, I think some of the Chinese brands also we saw were doing the same thing.
But Sergius, in fact, I would say BMW is doing the same thing because, we saw this vision display and wow, it was fantastic and new. But then I saw the Xiaomi.
Yes, the YU7.
The YU7, which wasn't even in a Xiaomi store. It was in, Caresoft's stand, which is really a teardown company.
Right.
And they just had it on display to kind of portray the technology that is there. And apparently that they had done...
when the car launched, essentially.
When the car launched. So, the Chinese are just there first with the technology before the Europeans, before anyone. So we talk about the Chinese in a bit.
We'll come to that.
But coming back to this, I think what's also interesting is the design direction,
right,
which Mercedes has taken more than anything. I think BMW, clearly, if you see their EVs, they look like combustion cars. Mercedes had gone completely different, very radical, very rounded, very sleek.
Slippery, yeah.
And I think in that quest for aerodynamics to get the range, I think they really changed the shape. And I think buyers didn't really take to that. So they've had to come back to a traditional shape. And I think the GLC EV really looked good.
Yeah.
I love the grille. I love the proportions. And I think they've really fixed a lot of the issues. So, clearly Mercedes has had to course correct. And it's an admission of their error. And I was talking to Markus Schaefer, who's the CTO. And he said, look, well, when we launched the EQ range, initially we thought that the early adopters would want differentiation, which may have been the case. But now as you get into more mainstream EVs, people just want the same looking car and want to be able to choose between an ICE and an EV powertrain. So I think they've now had to go back to that direction, which BMW stuck to right from the beginning. i7 is a classic example of how successful that car was. A 7 or an I series, a 7 series or an i7 look similar. Whereas an EQS and an S-Class were just totally falls apart.
Yeah.
And we know the EQS, hasn't really fared well at all. In fact, it's, not been a success to the level they had hoped it would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hormazd, since we're talking about the grille design on the Mercedes, they've gone large and the square dots. Interestingly, both the cars harked back to the Neue Class grille, the thin vertical grills, is what the first Neue Class in the 60s had. The
62, yeah, that's
in 62. So it was from there. And the Mercedes grille also, the square the waffle grille that they had on, I think, the 280 SE and cars like that. So both of them going back to the old grills.
I think heritage has become probably right now the key differentiator. Because honestly, when it comes to EV technology, the Chinese are right up there.
Exactly.
So how do you differentiate? You play on your past, you play on the heritage.
Which the Chinese don't have.
Which the Chinese don't have. So I think they're really going to be playing the kind of heritage card, the brand legacy and all that, which is important to a lot of buyers.
Exactly.
So I think they're really going to have to harp on that, with these cars.
Yeah, and absolutely, Hormazd, if you look at even heritage, I think Mercedes are really sort of pushing that hard because the headlights and the taillights both have the tri-pointed star as a DRL kind of signature inside, So they're pushing the brand, they're pushing all of that because tech, they are playing catch up to the Chinese. Yes, we know that. I think, in fact, in a way, they are also going back. If you look at in terms of controls, thankfully so. Physical controls coming back.
Yeah, absolutely.
We saw that.
They've got buttons back, and more than that, even we saw this on the CLA Electric. the button quality has also changed. They're proper clicks right now, not just a touch.
Right, the area that you press
Yeah,
on.
that's right. You got a proper tactile feel, which I think was clearly something we had criticized actually, with the last range of vehicles, and even currently right now, very scratchy controllers on the steering wheels. You just don't get a proper nice.
The seat adjustment button doesn't move.
Doesn't move. Yeah, you just tap it and it goes. It doesn't really give you that satisfying tactile feel Mercs are known for. So they've come back to that, which is great.
Right. So, and Hormazd, we should also talk about the tech spec. In fact, I have a lot of it here. I mean, they haven't released all of the specs of all the cars, but on the Merc, for example, you've got two versions that they showed or announced. The 300 Plus, which is a 374 horsepower single motor. You've got the 400, which was a dual motor, the 4MATIC, 489 horsepower and 713 kilometers of range on the WLTP cycle. Both versions will be powered by a 94 kilowatt hour NMC battery. Now, if you look at BMW, on paper, they actually have the better spec in the sense that their range, first of all, goes higher. It goes up to a maximum of 805 kilometers.
Wow.
Bigger battery also, 108.7 kilowatt hour battery. So you've got a little bigger battery. Even on, if you look at the acceleration times, top speed, they're slightly faster than the Mercs. So
right.
I think spec-wise, they seem to be taking
taking the lead over there. Yeah, clearly. I think, again, we'll have to see what the pricing is, though. So that's not really super critical in this segment. But I would imagine Mercedes always prices at a slight premium. They will be more expensive. See how customers take to that. I mean, but anyway, it's not going to come for a while. I think these cars will be seen in 2027. And I think one ace which BMW has with the iX3, which, has not been officially said, but we know, the iX3 will come in long wheelbase form.
Okay.
And it makes sense because you've got the iX1 in long wheelbase.
Right.
So if you had a standard iX3, space might be similar. Right. So they've kind of committed to a long wheelbase strategy, and they found it works with the 5 Series, it works with the 3 Series. Right.
It would make great sense for India.
And absolutely, it would make great sense for India. And sitting in both cars, what's interesting is that they've really got the packaging right. Earlier, even in the EQC, you sat in a very high knees-up position. And clearly, you can see the benefits of an all-EV architecture making a difference. It's not compromised. It's not an ICE architecture converted where you really don't have place for the batteries and that intrudes into cabin space. And I think that's even BMW's strategy now is to go for this all EV platform for the smaller cars and have a parallel ICE platform.
Right.
And maybe the same top hat also. They won't look different.
Sure.
So that's quite interesting because if you see in India, everyone's trying to differentiate. A lot of people are trying to differentiate. Mahindra, for example, are differentiating their EVs dramatically from their ICE vehicles. But I think in Europe now, being that mature market, people, they are not looking at that differentiation.
Right.
The EVs have become mainstream and it's just another powertrain option.
Right.
So clearly, I think that's how they're positioning the cars as well. And so I think in terms of technology, what's under the skin is going to be pure EV. Yeah, that's right. So they really packaged it well that way. And I think it's the same with the Mercedes, that they moved away from, yes, our EVs will be designed differently from the ICE vehicles. I think that's gone. They've realized their folly.
Correct.
I think, one of the BMW board members who we spoke to did take a swipe at Mercedes, Jochen Gollner, and said that, we don't believe in designing different for ICE and designing different for EV. Not taking any names, but it was understood. And I think that's the direction the industry is taking.
Absolutely. And I think what's interesting is that if you look at even the name now, it's the same. So
absolutely.
Earlier it was the EQC. It's no longer the EQC. It's now GLC. So you have a GLC and ICE and you have a GLC with
electric
EQ technology.
That's right.
Although the cars' names are the same, but the platform, like you said, is completely different. In fact, this one debuts Mercedes' new platform, which is the MB.EA architecture.
Correct.
So new architecture debuting, I would assume, would roll out a few more models on this architecture as well, like the Neue Class.
And I think what's important is that a lot of the technology on this will also come to the ICE version. Right. So this panoramic screen, BMW is saying you're going to see it now across 40 different models, going forward. because it'll be on ice, it'll be on refreshes. So, even your future BMWs will all have that kind of slim, panoramic vision display. I think it looks great. It'll be interesting to see how, customers take to it.
I think so too, Hormazd. In fact, frankly, I like that. It's nice. And, very interesting tidbit here is that Tata Avinya, when they showed the first concept, not the later one, actually had this similar concept. And I remember talking to Martin, the design head, and he said that, look, the way we see the future, it's going to move away from these large, laptop-sized screens and into smaller screens exactly where you need them.
Yeah.
And I think the Avinya had these screens all over the place and smaller ones. And of course, these guys have put it into production. We're yet to see the Avinya. But yeah, I would like to think that, Tata did call that actually, in terms of this little horizon display.
That's right. I think even at that time, even the Chinese were
looking
looking
were
at
also looking at that. Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes. And also a bit of the surprise on the new Neue Class platform was the i3 or the electric 3 Series, and it was still with a camo on. But clearly you could see it a standard 3-box design. So again, that's something that can be expected. I think iX3 again coming in 27. I think one of the reasons for the delay is because they're going to be developing a long wheelbase version for the Chinese market, and then we'll also get that. But I think even the i3 will come after that. So really 2027 is going to be quite an interesting year for us from both Mercedes and BMW. A lot of new products coming in, and these two are going to be going head to head when they come here. I think the other one, which I was excited about, was the new 911 Turbo.
Right.
Which is a hybrid.
Right.
That was what it was. So clearly, I think, mixed feelings about it being a hybrid for me at least. Though I drove the Carrera GTS, which is absolutely phenomenal as a hybrid in terms of performance. And but as pure ICE, now the Turbo is also a hybrid. And I think the number is just unbelievable. Some 711 horsepower.
The most powerful 911 ever built.
Yeah. A production car.
Production car.
Yeah,
Production
that's
car,
right. So completely mad, insane. I think we've got the drive next month.
Right.
I think you're going for it.
No, actually, that's Nikhil. He's the lucky guy.
Yeah.
So,
So damn, I'm missing that one. But
we both are.
Yeah, correct. So, but I think that's going to be one hell of a car. And Porsche being Porsche, I think they're using the hybrid for the right reason. It's not to have this part electric running. It's not a plug-in. It's there just to give you performance.
Absolutely.
And assist the, combustion engine. Because clearly, combustion engine is, I would guess, in a way maxed out. And I think this time, if I'm not mistaken, it's 2 turbos.
2 turbos.
Yeah,
They've added one electric turbo to the GTS's single turbo. So
Right.
you've got now twin turbo.
Yeah, that's right. One for each bank
Right.
of plus hybrid technology.
Plus hybrid technology. In fact, it was very interesting. Gavin was just remarking to me the other day, having driven the GTS here.
Yeah.
He said this is the first hybrid I've driven where the efficiency is worse than the non-hybrid.
Yeah.
So he says they're just using the hybrid for pure performance.
Yeah, that's right.
So interesting. And I think the other numbers also almost like this is the largest disc brakes they fitted to a Porsche sedan.
Yeah, and 0 to 100 also comfortably
2.5 seconds.
2.5 seconds. That's insane.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is really like being shot out of a cannon. Yeah, so
exactly.
Really,
electric car.
Can't wait to drive this one. Yeah,
true. And yeah, absolutely. Other numbers, Hormazd, it's 14 seconds, a good 14 seconds faster on the Nürburgring than the predecessor. So
that is
obviously hybrid is hybrid is working, and it's a heavier car too.
Yeah.
So despite the extra weight, but with the power and the performance, they've shaved off 14 seconds on the.
The good thing about Porsche is their cars are generally on the lighter side. They're not super heavy at all. Yeah.
To begin with, yes. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, of course, Hormazd, one thing though we have to say, having seen it, if we didn't know what it was, we'd have probably thought it was just a 911, because as with all 911s,
yeah, that's right.
It looked the same, I mean,
that's the beauty of the 911.
The beauty of it, yeah.
So evolved. You really don't need to change the shape.
Right.
Yeah, which,
and it still looks gorgeous. I mean, it doesn't look dated in any way. In fact, this version, the Turbo S, I think the only way you can differentiate, or one of the easy ways, is the tailpipes. Yeah. It's got quad squarish pipes compared to the 2 ovals or 4 round pipes.
Right.
I think tailpipes are different on all of the 911s and a few other smaller aero bits.
That's right. But I'll tell you one thing about the 911s, and, not just this one, they're just getting wider and wider and wider. They're not compact like they used to be. So I think really to put all that power down, to kind of meet all the regulations, they're just becoming much bigger than what they were.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes the 911s become just too big. Too wide and too big. So, I think that's one downside. But again, I think Porsche really, with each iteration, just make them so much better to drive here.
Absolutely. And, Hormazd, since we're on Porsche, we have to also talk about the other interesting tech that they debuted there on the Cayenne, which was wireless charging. I mean, we have it on our phones, but it's coming to a car and will be on sale. In fact, technically, you can book an electric Cayenne with the receiver. Right. And the base plate will be shipped sometime early next year. 11 kilowatt hour wireless charging. So, yeah, it's not obviously very quick. But the point is you install it in your garage or your parking spot, wherever it is. You
don't have to fiddle with cables.
Exactly. Just drive over there. It tells you when you've placed it exactly over. And that's it. You go away. And very interesting tech because, there were a lot of questions that kept coming up. And I remember asking one of the guys there, and I said, okay, what about, safety and things like that? He said, oh yeah, if your pet, like a cat, goes through there, the charging stops. So it is any living creature, that gets through there. So current will stop and things like that. So the magnetic field stops. So yeah, very, very interesting tech. I think also interesting to see was that it's weatherproof. You could install it in an open air parking spot too, the charging plate. So do you think you'd like to see wireless charging? Because I know, you're no fan of plugging in all the time. Like you said, you'd love to have a guy.
Yeah, it would. But to be honest, plugging in isn't so bad. I mean, it's like, I guess with your phone, sometimes you don't mind plugging in and wireless charging. So, but, wireless charging heats up your phone. I don't know, it's going to heat up the car, the battery or what. I don't know how it works. But yeah, I think it's not a game changer or something, but I guess it can be useful in places where you don't have to get out, or it's a little tight parking. You don't have to go around and get a plug, dirty your hands. So I think it does add a huge level of convenience to charging. We are really not used to kind of and sometimes the flap is dirty or whatever. You brush your pants against the door. So I think from a convenience standpoint, obviously, it would work very well.
Hormazd, so still staying with the VW group is VW themselves, who were also there in force with the Polo, right? But not a Polo that we can look forward to coming back, right?
No, it's electric.
It's electric.
I mean, they could bring it, but even at 5% GST, it would just be too expensive.
Right.
And, I don't think people would pay that for a hatchback. So I think... it's just something which I don't think will make it over here.
Absolutely. And, it was interesting, though, to see and hear, because while they were speaking at the conference, they did remark that, look, this was the ID2 all concept that they had. And earlier, I think the thought was to go with this ID naming strategy. So they had the ID2 all, they had the ID3, etc. Now, they very clearly said that we're going to be bringing back our sort of legacy brand. So this is the Polo, the ID.Polo. We'll have an ID Passat, perhaps is what Autocar sister publication is reporting in the UK. You could have the ID Golf. So, they would leverage the old sort of and the heritage badges. Interestingly, the electric Polo that they showed there was a near production ready. So the cars that we'll have up on screen, they're just stickered essentially to disguise the actual production bodywork.
Right.
So very interesting to see that it did look nice. I thought I was trying to look a little beyond the stickering. Typically European, nice clean lines. Fairly large. In fact, I think it's just over the 4-meter mark.
But that's irrelevant with electric.
Irrelevant with electric.
I mean, for India, but I still don't think it's going to come.
It's going to come, And then there's the hot GTI version, which they also showed there.
Yeah.
And then you also have talk of them be a Club Sport and an R version, which could go up to 400 odd horsepower, dual motors. So
but I don't know how they would differentiate this in terms of performance, being all electric, because frankly, the character is the same generally with electrics. It's just that the intensity of the acceleration changes. There's, you're not going from a 4-cylinder to a V6 or a V8 where you get a different engine characteristic or sound, or it's naturally aspirated or a turbo. That characterfulness, I think, is going to be a challenge. You can have artificial sound, but just all EVs so far are just so linear. It's just that with power, the intensity of the acceleration changes, but the character is roughly the same. So
Absolutely.
it's going to be, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they really differentiate it.
So-
You can do it with handling and with, let's say with the dynamics of the car. But I think it's, and they're all heavy as well. So it's really quite different now.
Absolutely. And in fact, I think one thing that can add to this is, but it's too expensive perhaps, is a gearbox like we've seen with the Porsche and the Audi.
Yeah.
Right, a 2-speed gearbox on an EV. You can bring in that little bit. I mean, I remember.
Or what we've seen with what Hyundai have done with the Ioniq 5N.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that is just a different level altogether. I mean, it really is the closest you get to ICE, isn't it, in an EV?
Exactly, absolutely, and in fact, maybe they've gone a step too far because with the simulated engine sounds and gear shifts. But I know I haven't driven one as yet, the N version. So yeah, you never know; they could go down that path.
Right, and also sticking with the VW group, I think Skoda also have showing EVs, but again, no real plan to bring it to India.
Sadly, yes, because they showed the Epiq, which is going to be their most affordable EV, sits below now the current range, which have the ENIAC and the L-Rock.
Yeah.
So the Epiq would be a 25,000 pound kind of car, but still too expensive for India.
See, I think also, like we said, all these cars are made for the European market. They are not made for a market like India. So there are certain costs in them. So I think that's really been the challenge for companies like Volkswagen, Skoda, to kind of, these cars are engineered for different markets. And, it's not what people in India want. They want slightly bigger cars. They may not want, some of the content that is there in these cars. They want a different feature set, for example. So I think it's very clear that these cars are not transportable in the sense they can't be made in India at the right price. Though I think one thing also one should mention is that Volkswagen kind of launched or talked about the unified cell, which we've been waiting for, and that will really give a lot of scale to cell manufacturing from Volkswagen, and clearly this is being made in the Salzgitter plant. I think that's the cell Mahindra were also going to take.
Was supposed
now we'll see whether they do. I don't think they will. They had signed a big kind of MOU with Volkswagen for this cell, but I think that's not going to happen. So yeah, clearly Volkswagen Group, their products, they are struggling right now to find something suitable on the EV front or anything to bring to India to produce on a mass scale or in volumes.
Absolutely, and it's a shame, Hormazd, because I drove while we were there in Munich on one of the days we had the L-Rock. What a phenomenal car. I mean, the review is going to be going up soon, but really, really amazing. And it actually had a little bit of character to it. Somehow it wasn't just linear, the acceleration all through. Of course, space inside, quality levels, the ride, the handling. Really, really nice car. The only thing I didn't like perhaps was that tiny little IP screen behind, because they've gone to the big touch screen and a tiny screen there. But apart from that, it was a fantastic car. And it's the same with the Epiq. The Epiq too has a similar setup. Small little screen there, large screen here. In fact, the Epiq is also quite large in the sense that it's about 4.3 or 4.4 meters in length. So from a SUV point of view, although they are smallest, it still is fairly large. So it's a shame really that these cars can't make it here to India.
Absolutely. So, but who knows, with the FTA, with the EU at some point, a lot of opportunities can open up. And clearly that is being discussed, that is being talked about. So, it might be a different world 5 years from now, where finally, the biggest barrier, which is high duties, which keeps a lot of these cars out, because just importing them as is, you just don't get the value in terms of price to size, size to value, that sort of thing. They just get knocked out in terms of value perception. But I think once the duties come down, hopefully with FTAs, it could open up a market for all these kind of cars.
And then, of course, Skoda also showed a concept, a very far-out concept, the Vision O, which they said is a preview of combis, as their word for sedans is, for the next decade. So still clearly at the very least 5 years away.
Yeah.
They said O stands for the circularity. It's been designed with recyclability in mind, but it's also the Octavia, I suppose, which is giving some design cues of the future Octavia, which had a combi version.
Yeah, that's right. I know. Yeah. Well, hopefully that's one model we'll keep getting.
Right.
The Octavia RS is going to be launched.
Correct.
So, and it's a brand that was a model that launched the Skoda brand in India.
Absolutely.
So I think Octavia close to our hearts, and hopefully whatever shape or form the Octavia takes, we'll get it in India.
And I think what was the last car brand, at least from the VW group, Audi? They didn't really have, I would say, anything production ready with the concept, and very interesting concept, the Concept C, which they said is not a TT, because somehow it looked like a TT and, was reviving the TT, but they were very keen to say that it's not the TT, it won't be called the TT, but it will sit between the TT and the R8, two sports/supercars that they lost, right? And they have no supercar in their range or sports car in their range now.
Absolutely not. I think it's a big loss that way. So I think clearly the R8 was quite an icon, especially the V10 Plus. It was Lamborghini engine, and really, I think they've really lost that position. They had quite a following, but I think when it comes back, it's, as you said, going to be electric.
Yes, going to be electric. So hopefully now, though, I'm just hoping that there will be some change with, the slowdown in electric. But they were quite clear to say that this is an electric.
Yeah, that's right.
It's going to be an electric, and we're going to have to make peace with that, I guess. And
absolutely. The V10 is gone. You've seen that. It's just gone. So I think if at all we can hope for a V8 from Lamborghini. But again, I think, as you said, it's electric all the way. That's really the reality. That's the future. How much customers embrace it remains to be seen.
Right. And though one very interesting note was that they did also stress is that they said they were very open to looking at synthesized engine sounds and synthesized gear shifts like the Ioniq N.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether you like it, hate it, but it's going to be coming on an electric Audi sports car, fake gear shifts or whatever.
Well, I don't know, Sergius. I think all of us, our generation, obviously we're not going to like it, but who knows, with the new Gen Zs or whatever.
Yeah, they might like it.
They might like it.
And Hormazd also part of the VW group, Ducati bikes, just moving to bikes there. They did showcase the electric bike, which for me interesting was the fact that it will be Volkswagen's first vehicle with a solid state battery. And I think everyone's been saying this, that solid state battery could be the game changer.
Correct, yeah.
And
just production, I think it is so challenging, right? So to manufacture it at scale is always a challenge, but that would be fantastic, I think everyone's putting now firm dates on solid state. So clearly, I think they've passed a certain gate, a certain hurdle, and now it's just a matter of time, getting everything ready for production.
And then Hormazd, before we move on to the Chinese who were there was also other European brands, Renault, other German brands, Opel. In fact, for me, I was so thrilled to see Opel back again, showing the Corsa concept, because that was the car that I sort of began my career with, the Opel Corsa. And it just struck me that, man, this was a car that was in India, but is of no relevance now.
In fact, I think what this show also kind of drove home is the fact of how the Indian market, to be honest, is very disconnected from Europe in so many ways. The cars that we saw from the Europeans, especially at the motor show, have no relevance for India at all. Even brands, we had Opel in the past, that's gone. So I think clearly, it just kind of drives home the point that the Indian market is so unique and needs bespoke products developed and designed for Indian consumers, which obviously are not going to be there in a show meant for the European market.
Yeah, and maybe that's where some of the Chinese brands could have a hope, because there are some similarities, at least in the consumer taste.
I think a lot of similarities. Yeah. If you ask me, there are a lot of similarities. They love their gadgets and gizmos.
As we do here.
As we do. I think they love space. Chauffeur-driven cars, the long wheelbase cars really work well there. Don't forget, E-Class comes from China.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of them. And Sergius, I think you spent a lot of time. I think we need to run through the Chinese manufacturers.
Absolutely, Hormazd. In fact, there were many of them. Some of the ones that I could see, Aito. There was GAC. There was Ion, Dongfeng with Forting, which I think seemed to be like their premium brand.
Yeah.
So Avta, Chang'an, Xpeng, 212, which kind of caught your eye too.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a G-Wagon ripoff.
Yeah, and it wasn't electric. The only Chinese car that wasn't electric.
Diesel,
Cummins diesel engine.
Exactly. So that was really crazy, to see that it's so... such an un-Chinese kind of powertrain.
Right.
But I guess, there's a market for that, and they kind of took that.
And it clearly drives home the point that the Chinese don't know engines also, because while EV powertrains are China developed, this one they had to go to Cummins for.
Yeah, that's right.
They don't have their own sort of engine.
Especially in diesel, they've never been strong in diesel.
Exactly.
And clearly, we've seen that. I mean, even the Gloucester diesel is quite refined and all, but not a great diesel at all, by any standards. In fact, I think our Indian diesels are much better. Mahindra's far better than what the Chinese do.
Correct.
But again, that's really the past, and it's really the EVs where they've just stolen such a march on it.
Yeah, and Hormazd, I have to ask you of the list that I just read, because I want to ask your opinion here. All of these cars, when we saw them, at the end of it, I couldn't quite place the car to the brand. They all looked very similar.
Yeah.
There was no design sort of uniqueness or maturity within the brands. Did you feel the same of the Chinese
Absolutely.
brands?
And I think, when you go through the show and you see all the Chinese brands, it kind of tells you what the Chinese market is like. And there are two things. One is, it is intensely competitive. The number of brands in China is just crazy. Can be 100 plus.
Right.
All of them fighting for market share. And the way they can win market share is by technology and features, because like a lot of Chinese, they get bored very fast. And you have to keep exciting them with new features. That's why they are so ahead of the curves just on the tech and the features in the car. I mean, Xiaomi,
Right.
the YU7, which was in that, Care-Soft. I mean, I was just blown away with the car. I mean, even something like to open a bonnet, there's no lever, nothing. It's electrically operated. You press a button and the bonnet just goes up electrically and shuts electrically.
Right.
Now, something small like that, especially at our security at hotels, where they want to open the bonnet. Now, a lot of them don't do that. I mean, it's just crazy, and as I said, again, they have their own kind of display, so-called, let's say a strip under the windscreen. So their screens, and I think what has really taken a leap forward, and shockingly so, is interior quality.
Yeah.
A big jump ahead. Earlier we had seen the Koreans had taken a big jump. In fact, I remember at the Frankfurt show, Volkswagen bosses, were examining Hyundai's interior quality, which became close to the Europeans. That time Korean, their interior ecosystem had really developed, is still to a phenomenal level. In fact, Mahindra benefit a lot from SsangYong's, interior ecosystem, to develop the materials, the design, tolerances, all that. But now the Chinese have again, jumped, and I was just blown with just the fit, finish, of these vehicles. And, earlier in Chinese vehicles, they were good. Like, even things like the Hector, which I would say, definitely a generation behind. The perceived quality is good, but not necessarily the absolute quality. You touch, feel, and poke around, you can realize, it's lacking. But I think in the latest generation of Chinese cars, they've improved the overall quality. So really outstanding. I think, for me, just spending time in that YU7, everything electrically adjusted, the back seat, it was just moving every which way. They're just amazing. And even their designs, as you said, very generic. To be honest, copied a lot. I thought this one had hints of the Puro Sangue.
Right.
I was from the rear. But, you can't deny
Can't fault them on quality.
And Xiaomi is a phone manufacturer.
Exactly.
That is what it just blows your mind. How could they make a car like this? So it just tells you about the intense competition, the Chinese supplier ecosystem, and how they, let's say, I think that's what's really pulling up the entire industry, and the tech and the quality and the appeal of the cars, which is now really fighting with the best in the world.
Yeah, and Hormazd, it's telling that a company like Care-Soft, which does teardowns of cars and does benchmarking for automotive brands, chose to showcase as like a pinnacle of quality and benchmarking a Chinese brand, Xiaomi.
Right.
And I think for me, even the fabric on the doors, the stitching, absolutely perfect, in line,
Top class. That's right.
absolutely top class. And then you realize the price of that car. I think for me, if we convert it was some 40 lakh, 45 lakh.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling. It's just
Correct.
mind-boggling.
No, I think that's why, you wonder how they can give this at these prices. But I think there are a couple of things. One is it's intensely competitive.
Right.
So they really have to fight at every level. That's why I feel the Indian market is not competitive at all. Like we said, we've got 6 players fighting who control 94% of the market.
Yeah.
I mean, where's the real competition for Mahindra and Tatas? It's just, no one really. So, they aren't under the pressure these guys in. And over there, I think the way the supplier ecosystem works is as a cross brand. I mean, you'll have in a, let's say in a supplier's office, guys from competing brands sitting there because they will all use the same door handle, for example. There's a certain level of standardization, which I think even is government mandated to a certain extent. Door handles, you'll see across all brands, that typical flush door handle. And that's just a phenomenal cost-saving, let's say strategy. So because it's really not that important. And as long as it's functional and works, that's what they'll go with.
Absolutely. And, Hormazd, so speaking of the Chinese brands, I mean, all of these brands are irrelevant to us, but there was one that was relevant and has announced an India entry, which is Leapmotor.
Yeah, that's right.
So Stellantis partner, or in fact, they have a...
I didn't get a chance to really check out their stall, but you saw it.
Yeah, I did, Hormazd. So they had a concept car there. It was called the B05, which was kind of like I think a mock-up or so. But the other car was the Leapmotor B10. In fact, that was quite interesting to see because...
and that's expected here,
It's expected here because it didn't look like the typical Chinese other EVs there, which is dominated by, slim door handles, flush handles, thin DRLs, headlights, which are sometimes disguised. This looked more traditional in the sense of as a car did. One weakness, though, I thought was the interiors because it looked way too plain Jane. Just way too simple. And like we just spoke, the Indian audience also, like the Chinese, we like this sort of flashy, blingy thing. I think Leapmotor is more influenced by the Stellantis, the European sort of thought process there.
But that could also mean it's going to be super competitively priced and super cheap because they would have built it to a really incredible cost.
Could be, exactly. So, that car, that brand remains to be seen how it works out here because in China, Leapmotor is its own kind of brand. I think Stellantis has a minority stake, but in the international operations, they have a 51%.
That's right. Yeah.
Controlling stake Stellantis has. So Stellantis actually has a controlling stake and decides which products, where they go. And we know they just announced earlier this year that they are coming to India. They didn't announce which products, but money would be on this one, maybe the B10. In fact, the specs, if I look at it, it's about a 4.5 meter length car, 2 battery sizes, 56 kilowatt and 67 kilowatt hour battery, LFP batteries. You've got 2 horsepower, 177 and 215 horsepower. And yeah, the interiors, of course, the touchscreen, there's a 14-inch touchscreen.
Pretty much standard spec today. All cars are that size, that battery size. So,
exactly.
So I think it really depends on the price because that is getting to be a bit of a crowded space over here. But again, I'm sure they'll kill it on price here. So
yeah. I only hope they do something about the interiors and Stellantis learned the lesson from the Citroen sort of debacle they went through. Great cars, fundamentally. We love the engine, especially suspension, fantastic. But they corrected it, thankfully, now with the X range.
That's right.
Really done up the interiors of the Basalt and now the Aircross. So I hope they don't go through that same sort of learning because it did look quite Spartan.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Hormazd, oddly enough, despite some of the brands that we saw like the Mercedes and the BMW electric SUVs that will come to India, we know the first one from the Munich Motorshow could actually be the Leapmotor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, I mean, again, just to wrap up, I think it's been a pretty long episode this time, but quite lots to talk about. I think... Munich show, I think a lot of lessons learned, how far the Chinese have gone and they're in terms of technology, but even in terms of quality. So really made staggering strides over there. Clearly, a lot of the models not relevant for the Indian market, which just goes to show how different Europe is from India. But I think 2 key models, which are there at the top end from BMW and Mercedes, the iX3 and the GLC, these are the ones to look forward to, not before 2027. And of course, not many people can afford that car, but really, I think the most exciting for the Indian market when it comes is the new 911 turbo from Porsche. That's the one I would look forward to. So that's it from us on Deep Drive. Hope you enjoyed this episode. And to make sure that you don't miss any of our future episodes, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you can stay notified. Alternatively, you can also get us on our other podcast platforms, which is Spotify and Apple Podcasts. See you again next week, same time, Saturday, 11 a.m.